Are you ready to make a big financial decision and buy your first house or get your first Airbnb, and you're worried that you're going to mess it up or you might do something wrong, or oh my gosh, is this going to cost me my life savings? You're not alone. Today, we are going to talk about the top 3 mistakes that new real estate investors make so that you don't have to. Odds are I probably did make these mistakes, and that's why we're talking about them today. So these insights could save you thousands of dollars. Strap in. Welcome back to the channel, and here we go. All right, before we dive in, please, number 1, click subscribe, okay? Throw the video a like, put a comment at the end, but subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next video, as we are so close to 2,000. Keep growing, growing, growing. I appreciate that you're here watching this video. The number 1 mistake that new real estate investors make is they think that their primary residence counts as a real estate investment. I want you to find the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, and I want you to read what he writes about buying a house as a residence and buying a house as an investment, and how it's a completely different thing. A lot of people think that buying a house as a residence, so buying a house, living in it, right, the American dream, buying your first house, a lot of people think that, okay, now I'm in real estate investing, I'm going to buy my first house. And the reality is if you're buying a house just to live in that house, it's actually a very bad investment, because when someone buys a house to live in, it seems like, okay, now we're getting ahead. This is going to be an asset, and I'd rather put money into something that I own rather than rent. And the truth is, the return on the dollars, there's no mathematical formula that make it make sense to buy a house to live in if you're doing it from a standpoint. Now, if you have renters that live with you and pay you rent and you're house hacking, that's completely different. But if you're buying a house just to live in it, the theory of, well, I'd rather own the thing that I'm paying my rent to every month, it doesn't work, because if someone is taking out a 30-year mortgage, which most people do, and putting the least amount of money down, that's usually the only way that they can get into the house in the first place. So with a $250,000 house, you put 5% down, that's $12,500, put in closing costs, whatever, you're around $20,000 investment into that house. And then if you do a 30-year mortgage, which most people do, your payment every month is going to be around $2,000 to live in this house. Well, most of that payment for the first 15, 20 years, it's not actually going towards the equity of the house at all. It's going to the bank. Now, you can get bailed out with the appreciation of the house, and eventually 20 years down the line, your payments do go towards the actual house. But in that time frame, your cash on cash return, your return on investment of the initial $20,000 spent could have been way smarter spent on getting an Airbnb or just putting it in a market, in the money market. Now, this is where you need to find a professional to sit down with, or at least someone advising you, or a mentor that can sit down and say, well, let's do the math. Let's see if it makes sense. And someone like me, I could help you do that. Someone like a financial advisor, it's always hard to tell what is the person's motivation. Because if you're going to sit down with a financial advisor who gets paid on the commission of your dollars put into the market, well, then that person's going to tell you, don't buy a house, put it in the market. Why are they saying that? Because they make money when you put money in the market. So you need to kind of figure out, okay, who can help me crunch these numbers that doesn't have a bias to my situation? And a lot of times that's why getting in a community or getting a mentor can be really helpful, because that person can help you break down the numbers to understand, are you making a huge mistake by buying a house to live in it? So that's number 1. And I could tell you so many stories of people that they buy a house and then they are paycheck to paycheck because they, you know what? Just think about your own parents. Think about your own aunts and uncles. Think about anybody in your life that's done this. Now, if you're from a small town or whatever, there's not really a lot of options. Like, you probably are going to end up buying a house, and it's not the end of the world. But if you're in the city, you have options to rent, and you're a young grinding salesperson professional, and you're like, I need to buy my first house. Whoa, Grant Cardone doesn't even buy a house. He just rents. And if I didn't get rent from my renters at our house, I wouldn't have bought it either. So that's number 1. The number 1 mistake is viewing your residence as an investment, because it's not. The second mistake that new real estate investors make that I see is they over leverage themselves. Just because the bank says you can borrow $1 million, it doesn't mean that you actually should. Now, the risk here for salespeople is that if you're a salesperson, if you're 1099, you probably aren't going to be able to buy a house anyway unless you get a cosigner. Once you get that cosigner, because you're getting a W-2 or W-9 or someone in your life to help you get the loan, either your parents or a friend who has a W-2 or whatever, you probably will be able to get a loan that covers a big enough house. However, because you're a salesperson, if you're going to go buy a real estate investment that is an asset that requires you to pay $2,000 a month or whatever, and you're over leveraged on debt, and you're in a place where every month you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to pay this? How am I going to pay this? I need to sell this much to pay my loan. I need to sell this much to pay my mortgage. You're going to be in a really tough spot as a salesperson because all of a sudden you have this neediness energy with you when you're meeting with clients. And that's never something that helps you make more sales. So because salespeople usually have to leverage a cosigner, they're able to get loans that might be out of their reach or out of their range to what's actually comfortable or right for them to get the loan. Now, the beauty of salespeople not being able to get loans is banks are protecting themselves because salespeople have fluctuating income like this. So that's why it's hard for a 1099 to even get a loan. It almost protects you as the salesperson from making that mistake. Well, when you get that cosigner, all of a sudden, woohoo, I can get money, I can buy a house. However, now you're leveraged to the point of that person's income because they co-signed, they helped to get the loan. So unless they're going to help with the payments, make sure that you're being smart about how big of a loan and how much that mortgage is compared to what you're currently making for income and what you're currently selling. The number 3 mistake that I see new real estate investors making or young salespeople who want to get into real estate investing, the number 3 mistake that I see them make is they aren't looking at investments from a cash flow perspective. So let's talk about cash flow. I know that there are investors out there who their target is not cash flow, it's long-term equity or it's depreciation on taxes. But for a young grinding salesperson like yourself, you really want to come into real estate investing as a younger 20s person from a cash flow perspective, or else it doesn't really make that much sense to invest in real estate at all until you're later in your 20s, 30s maybe, when you're looking for those long-term assets. But as a young grinding salesperson, there's a caterpillar on me. Wow, okay, there it is. But as a young grinding salesperson, what you're probably trying to do, at least for me, is replace that working income where you have to grind so much to make the active income, replace it with passive income. So when you're looking at real estate deals, what you're really trying to find is how much money is this house making me month in, month out? In my pocket. If the house isn't cash flowing at least $1,000 a month, I personally am not interested in investing in that deal. I don't think it's worth it under any circumstance because under $1,000 a month, that's $12,000 a year. If a furnace blows, boom, that's your entire year of profit gone. And gone for what? For a pain in the ass the other 12 months of the year. And so if you're going to get into a real estate investing deal, a house hack, an Airbnb, a whatever, make sure that you're cash flowing enough that it's worth it for you to put that energy and put that investment, that energy investment into the house. If it's not cash flowing a good amount, you could make that money by just selling more. That's the thing with passive income that a lot of people kind of get mixed up is passive income does not have to be the answer. What if you just made more with your active job? So be really careful about who are my tenants? Are they going to for sure pay me the rent? Prioritize things that will prioritize cash flow, and you should this should help you make a good first investment into the real estate world. So just to recap, just to summarize, number 1, a primary residence is not an investment. Make sure you remember that. Number 2, don't over leverage yourself, whether it's getting into an Airbnb that costs way more than you thought to set up, or getting into a house because now you have a cosigner that could get you that loan. And now you have to grind to try to get the mortgage payment. And number 3, prioritize cash flow over anything else as a young grinding entrepreneur, because that cash flow is going to be able to get you into other opportunities and replace your active income so you could put more time into building your empire through real estate. And then eventually you can switch your focus from monthly cash flow to appreciation or tax depreciation and investing in different type of assets that way. If you found this video helpful, click like, drop me a comment, subscribe to the channel, Unlock with Alex. I'm on a mission to help 1,000 sales reps get their first cash flowing properties, cash flowing Airbnbs. And if you want to see more Go to alexrfunk.com. If you want to read my book, which comes out September 2nd, go to thedreamslist.com. I appreciate that you're here. Subscribe to the channel. Again, watch another video, pass this video on, and we'll see you next time. Oh, and follow Unlock with Alex on Instagram if you as a salesperson want direct help getting your first property or first Airbnb. Thank you for being here.